Okay, welcome back. We're gonna move to the next part of the lesson. So we're gonna start with debugging a pet adoption page. So Sally, a pet adoption store owner, has built her first web page, but there are some issues. Your job is to fix all of the errors so Sally can continue building her page. Objective is to fulfill the user stories below and get all the tests to pass to complete the lab. So user stories. Number 1, Sally wants to use an image of some cats, but it is not displaying correctly. You will need to fix the following in the image element. So within the image element right here, it says to replace the href attribute with the correct attribute for the image source. So here, instead of href, I think you use href in the a attribute, not the image attribute. So I think you would need to change this to source src, and once you change it, the picture gets displayed here. And the next part is to replace the att attribute with the correct attribute representing short descriptive text for images. As we've learned previously, instead of att, it will be alt. So that fixes it. And thirdly, move the image closing tag because image elements are void elements and don't have closing tags. So instead of having this closing tag, well, we've learned that you just need to close with this, and that's enough because it is a void element. Moving on to number 2, Sally wants to use some links to direct users to the dog and cat page, but the links are not working correctly. You will need to fix the following in the A elements. Replace src attributes with the correct attributes used to specify URLs. So instead of source here, A uses href, so you will need to replace this to href, so that it changes to a link. And I think that's all you need to do. Let's run the test. See, you can submit and go to the next challenge. Let me drink some water. Okay, we're gonna move to the next lesson. So this part is kind of boring. It's a theory, but we would need to go over this. But the fun part is coming up, which is actually the workshop where you get to actually build something on your own. So just wait until we get there. So this part is understanding the HTML boilerplate. And we're going to start with the first theory section. What is the role of a link element in HTML, and how can it be used to link to external style sheets? So we're going to learn about the link element and how to use it to link to external style sheets. So the link element is used to link to external sources like style sheets and site icons. Here is the basic syntax for using the link element for an external CSS file. So this is basically a format to link external CSS file. What do you mean by that? So basically, if you are writing an HTML code, you're more likely writing it on a file called, index.html or whatever, right? I can show you. I think it's better if I show you an example. So I'm just going to show you an example. So if you look at, and I'm going to teach you how to, use this VS Code editor later on, so you don't have to know it. But so basically this HTML is a folder, and within the folder there is a index.html, which you usually work with this file in the beginning when you're developing a new page or something like that. You don't have to know it, but it's just a file, right? And there are, basically no, if you look at the live preview, let me show you. If you look at the live preview, it's just very simple, right? there is no, actually let me get rid of this. I'll just get rid of this. So basically this is just a regular index file, and it displays something on the web page. And there is another file called styles.css, and it contains some sort of styles, right? And if you were to connect these two files together so that it works in combination, you would have to use this link element. So if you have this link element here, I just copied and paste from here. What happened is that the style here gets applied in this file, and that is basically a reason for using a link element. And what do you mean by that? So style here, let's make it very distinctive by adding a color red. You notice that whatever that I change here, it affects what's in here, right? In here, in a body, you have the heading element and you have the paragraph element, and these two contents, you know, as you've noticed, that the color of the fonts changes. So basically it affects the outside external CSS affects what's inside index.html. So in order to make that happen, you would need to have this link element, and that's basically it. And I'm just going to move forward. So the rel attribute is used to specify the relationship between the linked resource and the HTML document. In this situation, we need to specify that this linked resource is a style sheet. So for CSS file, you just make it into a style sheet, and there you don't have to memorize this again. You could look it over in the reference if you forget it. I'm going to move forward. It is considered best practice to separate your HTML, CSS in different files. Developers will use the link element for their external CSS file instead of writing everything in the HTML document. So that's what I did, what I showed you earlier on the VS Code, that I have separated two files. And what it's saying here is that developers usually do that and link it together using a link element. The href attribute is used to specify the location of the URL for the external resource, and then dot followed by a / is example tells the computer to look in the current folder or directory for the styles CSS file. So usually style CSS file exists within the same directory of the HTML file. So / means that look it up in the same directory, and I will cover that later if you don't understand now. So the link element should be placed inside a head element as seen in the following example. So head element it exists within HTML file. It exists in the beginning part. Let me show you. It exists right here. So you will need to add that link element within this head element. And oftentimes you will need multiple link elements inside a professional code base that link to different style sheets, fonts, and icons. Here is an example of using the link element to link to an external Google font called Playwright Cuba. So usually you don't link like CSS file, but you could also link whatever that's on the internet, right? You could grab the fonts from Google if you use if you actually specify the href, and I'll basically go over that later if we work on the projects. And Google fonts are frequently used because it's free and it's well made. Let's see. Basically pre-connect value in a rel attribute tells the browser to create an early connection to the value specified in the href attribute. Yes, basically I think we could stop now. Rest of the stuff you don't need to know for now. Favicon is basically an icon that is shown on the browser. So when you open a website, you notice that this tab gets created and this favicon exists, alongside the web page, web description, or the title. So this is favicon, and that's all you need to know. We're going to move on to the questions. What is the role of the link element in HTML? So as we've discussed earlier, it is used to link to external resources like style sheets and site icons. You click that, and what is the role of the rel attribute inside the link element? As we've learned, basically it is used to specify the relationship between the linked resource and the HTML document. What is favicon? It's basically a small icon typically displayed in the browser tab next to the site title. Check your answer and move forward. Next part is to learn about HTML boilerplate. And what is an HTML boilerplate and why is it important? Let's learn about HTML boilerplate. And what is the HTML boilerplate, you ask? It's like a ready-made template for your WordPress. I mean, not WordPress, but web pages. Think of it as a foundation of a house, and a boilerplate includes the basic structure and essential elements every HTML document needs. It saves you time and helps ensure your page are set up properly. So example is this, and this example is very, very typical. And basically when you start a HTML file from the scratch, you will need to actually type everything here, right? And you don't want to do that because you may forget what to include. So that's why you use boilerplate. You just copy and paste it on the HTML file. But if you're using a VS Code, this part is like automatic. If you just start with exclamation mark and then just click it, and it just creates a boilerplate for you. But you don't have to do this because you could just copy and paste from the website if you have the boilerplate ready on the website. So that's basically it. You don't need to learn too much about it. Let's look at the content of it. So if you break down the key parts of the boilerplate, first there is a doc type declaration, which looks like this. It tells browser which version of HTML you're using. Next comes HTML tag. So there's HTML tag. As we learned, there's opening and a closing. And then this wraps around all your content and can specify the language of your page. Inside the HTML tag, you will find two main sections, head and body. So head exists within HTML element. You see, is wrapped around, right? So there's head element and there's a body element. And the head section contains important behind the scenes information. So as we've done earlier, we actually use a link element, but besides link element, there are a bunch of them. There are meta tags and there are titles, and usually we don't mess around with this. There's a definite boilerplate that I just copy and paste. But if you want to know further, your site's metadata contained in meta elements has details about things like character encoding, how websites like Twitter should preview your page's link, your site's title, found in title element, determines the text that appears in the browser tab or window. Finally, you'll typically link your page's external style sheet in the head section using link elements. So usually it does some sort of communication with your browser, what's inside the meta elements, and that's all you need to know. And the body section is pretty important because that's where all your content goes. So as we've learned earlier, we learned heading and the paragraph. All those elements go into a body element. So now, why is a boilerplate important? It ensures your pages are structured correctly and work well across different browsers. Using a boilerplate helps you avoid common mistakes and follow best practices is a great starting point for any web project. Remember, you can customize your own boilerplate to fit your needs. And as you gain experience, you might add your own preferred elements or meta tags. As you continue to improve your personal boilerplate, you will find that it saves you time when starting new projects. So once you have your own boilerplate ready, you can use it over and over because you can copy and paste to a new HTML file. And we're going to move on to the questions. Where would you set the character encoding for your page? So the character encoding, you could look it up, right? Let's see. Character encoding. It's within the head, right? So it's in the meta element in the head. So where would you set the language for your page? I believe it's at HTML right here. So you just, an opening HTML tag. What purpose does a boilerplate serve? So as we've discussed, it allows you to get started writing the content of your page faster. Yeah. And it provides a starting structure for your website, ensures you're not missing any essential elements. All of the above. And you check the answer and move forward. And I'm just going to wait until this advertisement is finished because I have to watch it. It's a free content after all. So you would need to watch the advertisement at least. So we're gonna learn about what is UTF-8 character encoding and why is it needed. So UTF-8 or UCS transformation format 8 is a standardized character encoding widely used on the web. Character encoding is the method computers use to store characters as data. All text on a web page is a sequence of characters stored as one or more bytes. In computing, byte is a unit of data consisting 8 bits or binary digits. UTF-8 supports every character in the Unicode character set, and this includes characters and symbols from all writing systems, languages, and technical symbols. Here is an example of using the meta element with the character set attribute to set the character encoding to UTF-8. Basically, I don't want to go deeper on this, but UTF-8 needs to be set so that the characters, as we know, gets displayed on the website. And I think for different languages, it covers like wide range of different languages. So if you set to UTF-8, it will handle different languages as well. That's all you need to know. It's not very important. So we're gonna move on to the questions. So which attribute is used to set UTF-8 character encoding in HTML documents? Again, it's in the boilerplate, so you don't have to memorize. But as you can see, it's on the meta tag, a meta element. Uses character set. So I'm gonna mark that. What is character encoding? Character encoding. What is character encoding? Let's see. First, the process of I would say it's a method a computer used to store characters as data. And how many bits are inside a byte? It was 8. So I'm just gonna check the answer and go to the next challenge. And I think I could stop the video here because this is the fun part. You're actually gonna make a cat photo app, and we're gonna move on to this section later. But I think for today we can stop the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to learn how to code for free, We're gonna do fun stuff later. Thank you, and I'm gonna stop the video now.